Everyone knows Japan is officially a pacifist nation. But what if that was just the cover for one of the smartest and longest-running strategic plays in modern history? While publicly rejecting nuclear weapons, Japan's leaders made a secret deal with the US that allowed a constant flow of them through its territory. Here's the kicker. This deal gave Japan the perfect cover to build its own bomb in the basement. Believe it or not, Japan has the technology and materials to become a nuclear power almost overnight. And we're about to explain how this hidden reality is shaping a dangerous new standoff in the Pacific. After the end of the Second World War, Japan was a nation reborn. Its new identity was built on one powerful idea: peace. The country's new constitution, written with American help, had a famous section, Article 9, that said Japan would never again have a military for waging war. It was a promise to the world. But here's something you probably didn't know. Just a few years later, Japan signed another deal, a security treaty that let the United States base its own military forces all over the country. You see the problem, right? How can a nation be officially peaceful but also host one of the most powerful militaries on Earth? This created a huge contradiction, and the only way to solve it was with a secret. The biggest secret of all was about nuclear weapons. In public, Japan's leaders were very clear. They had their 3 non-nuclear principles, which said Japan would not make, own, or allow nuclear weapons on its territory. But behind closed doors, a very different conversation was happening. In 1960, top officials from both countries made a secret oral agreement. This handshake deal gave the U.S. permission to bring nuclear-armed ships into Japanese ports and to land nuclear-armed planes at its bases. The key was that there was no official paper trail on the Japanese side. This gave Japan's leaders a way out. They could honestly tell their people they had no record of such a deal, all while knowing it was happening. In other words, America's nuclear umbrella over Asia was never just symbolic. It was secretly anchored in Japan, and that shadow deal is still the backbone of U.S. strategy against China and North Korea today. But the secret deals on the mainland were nothing compared to the island that America turned into a full-blown nuclear fortress. While mainland Japan was carefully pretending to be nuclear-free, the island of Okinawa was living in a completely different world. After the war, Okinawa didn't go back to Japan right away. Instead, it stayed under direct U.S. military control. This made it the perfect out-of-the-way place for America to store its most powerful and controversial weapons. And believe me, they stored a lot. From the 1950s to the early 1970s, Okinawa became America's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Pacific, armed to the teeth. Declassified photos and government files have since proven what many long suspected. The U.S. kept 19 different types of nuclear weapons there. We're talking about everything from Honest John rockets for the battlefield to massive Nike Hercules anti-aircraft missiles, and even Atomic Annie artillery shells. At its peak, there were nearly 1,000 nuclear warheads stockpiled across the island. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The thing nobody tells you is that it wasn't just nukes. The U.S. also stored thousands of tons of chemical weapons on Okinawa, including one of the deadliest nerve agents ever created, VX gas. In 1969, some of that gas leaked, injuring over 20 American soldiers. That incident blew the secret wide open and caused huge protests. But even when the U.S. finally agreed to return Okinawa to Japan in 1972, another secret deal was made. Publicly, America promised to remove all the nukes. But privately, they agreed that the U.S. could bring them back any time there was a major emergency. The weapons may have left, but the bases didn't. Even without nuclear warheads sitting in their bunkers, Okinawa became America's nuclear insurance policy in Asia. Why? Because Washington kept the infrastructure, the airfields, the ports, and the hardened shelters. In other words, Okinawa was like a vault with the keys still in America's hands. And even today, that vault still matters. More than 70% of U.S. military facilities in Japan are concentrated here. Without Okinawa, America's security shield over the Pacific would collapse almost overnight. This hidden history created a huge burden for the people of Okinawa, a burden that still causes major problems today. But the most shocking legacy of this deal is how it allowed Japan to quietly build a terrifying capability of its own. The secret deal had a very interesting side effect. Because Japan was protected by America's powerful nuclear umbrella, its government never had to seriously consider building its own. The Japanese public, who had a deep and understandable fear of these weapons, could continue to support a peaceful non-nuclear identity. But all the while, under this American protection, Japan was working on a secret insurance policy. Here's the twist. Japan has one of the most advanced civilian nuclear power programs in the world. As part of that program, they reprocess spent nuclear fuel, which creates a byproduct, plutonium. For years, Japan said it needed this plutonium for a new type of futuristic power plant. But that project never really worked out. Yet the country kept making more and more plutonium. Today, Japan has a stockpile of about 45 metric tons of it. To put that in perspective, that's enough material to build thousands of nuclear warheads. When you combine that massive stockpile with Japan's incredible technology and engineering skills, you get what experts call a threshold nuclear state. This means Japan has everything it needs to build a bomb and could probably do it in just 6 to 12 months if it ever made the political decision to do so. It's like having a bomb ready to go in the basement. This gives Japan a powerful unspoken security guarantee. Publicly, they are champions of peace. Privately, they have the power to change the global balance of power overnight. That means Washington isn't just protecting Japan. It's tied to a country that could build thousands of nuclear bombs almost overnight. And that hidden option could rewrite America's entire Pacific strategy in a single year. So Japan has the ultimate insurance policy tucked away. But for decades, the idea of ever using it was politically impossible. The memory of what happened in 1945 created what many call a nuclear allergy in the country. It was a deep cultural feeling that these weapons were off-limits, period. The 3 non-nuclear principles weren't just a policy, they were part of the national soul. But here's where things get really interesting. That allergy is starting to fade. You see, for the first time in generations, a serious debate about nuclear weapons is happening in Japan, and it's not just on the fringes. It's happening in the halls of government and on the front pages of newspapers. Why? Because many people in Japan are looking at the scary neighborhood they live in and are starting to doubt if America's promise to protect them is enough. Recent polls tell a shocking story. A staggering 77% of Japanese people now doubt the U.S. would actually defend them in a major conflict. That's a huge number, and it shows a massive crack in the foundation of the alliance. This growing doubt is changing minds. In just the last few years, the number of people who support rethinking the country's non-nuclear stance has doubled. And it's not that they suddenly love the idea of these weapons, but they are becoming pragmatic. This shift was kicked into high gear by respected leaders like the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who began openly talking about a nuclear sharing arrangement, similar to what some NATO countries have with the U.S. He was planting a seed, getting the public used to an idea that was once unthinkable. The taboo is breaking. Japan has the means to become a nuclear power, but what could possibly push them to actually do it? The answer to that is unfolding right now, in what has become a very dangerous neighborhood. The delicate balance that allowed Japan to live with its double identity for so long is now falling apart. The reason is simple. Its neighborhood has become incredibly dangerous. Japan is now facing serious threats from 3 different directions at once, and it's forcing the country to rethink everything. First, there's North Korea. This isn't just a distant threat. It's a neighbor with an estimated 50 nuclear warheads and the ability to build more each year. North Korea is constantly testing new missiles, including ones that can fly far enough to reach the United States. The strategic reason for this is to make America think twice about defending Japan. If an American city is at risk, would the U.S. really jump into a fight to protect Tokyo? It's a question that keeps Japanese leaders up at night. Then there's the giant next door, China. China has spent the last few decades building a world-class military that can challenge the U.S. in the Pacific. It now has the world's largest navy and uses its Coast Guard to constantly pressure Japan around disputed islands. And to top it all off, Russia and China have become close partners. They are now conducting huge joint military drills right in Japan's backyard. In 2025, their navies and even their submarines patrol together, circling the entire island nation. For Tokyo, this isn't just training. It's a clear message and a serious threat. This 3-front danger from North Korea, China, and Russia acting together has created a nightmare scenario for the country. For Japan, it's survival. For America, it's worse. Because if Tokyo doubts U.S. protection, it could go nuclear on its own, and drag America into a standoff far more dangerous than the Cold War ever was. Faced with these threats, Japan is making its biggest military move in 80 years. A move that completely changes its relationship with the U.S. and could drag America into a new kind of conflict. The old rules no longer apply. Faced with a trio of hostile neighbors, Japan is tearing up its old playbook. The country is officially moving away from its purely defensive military posture and is rearming at a speed nobody thought possible. The government has promised to double its defense spending by 2027, which would give it one of the biggest military budgets in the world. For fiscal year 2025 alone, the budget is a record $55 billion. But it's not just about spending more money. It's about what they're buying. Japan is investing billions in long-range counter-strike weapons. These are missiles like the American Tomahawk that can hit targets deep inside another country. They are also building their own advanced missiles, some of which will be able to fly over 600 miles. This completely changes the game. For decades, the US-Japan alliance worked like this. Japan was the shield responsible for defending its own territory, and America was the spear, providing all the offensive power. Now Japan is building its own spear. Truth be told, this is a very different situation from what other US allies have faced. Take Canada, for example. During the Cold War, Canada also agreed to host American nuclear missiles to defend against Soviet bombers. But unlike in Japan, this wasn't a secret. It caused a massive public debate that was so intense it brought down the Canadian government. Japan's secret deal avoided that kind of chaos, but it has led us to this moment, where the US now has to manage a much more powerful and independent ally. This new two-spear alliance is a huge shift, and it forces America to figure out how to work with a partner that can now strike back on its own. Will Japan finally bring its hidden bomb out of the basement? Tell me what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.